What's going on, YouTube? Today we're going to talk about bonsai pots, and we're going to be looking at all the different things you need to consider when you're about to put your tree into a new bonsai pot. So without further ado, let's get into it. Consider is what stage of development your tree is in. What I mean by that is if you have a very basic tree, as in you only have your main trunk built, even if you have that, or your main branches just starting to be built at this point, the last thing you want to do is to put it into a really nice bonsai pot, like a ceramic pot. Reason being is that's going to slow down the tree's development while you're trying to build your structure on the tree. So the best thing to actually put it in at that point is a large training pot, either a large wooden crate flat box, an Anderson flat, or even for pine trees and other conifers, something like this, which is like a big pond basket. These are great for developing trees because as the roots start to expand the pot, they won't encircle the pot like they would in a normal like 1 gallon or 5 gallon nursery pot. They actually will start to come out these little holes on the side, and they'll get what's called air pruned, which means that as they hit the air, that part of the root will die off, and it's going to force it to basically bifurcate inside the pot. And it's going to force it to start building more and more fine feeder roots inside of this little pond basket. So they're a great invention for when you're trying to train your trees. Now, if on the other hand your trees are pretty well developed, you have your main branches, your trunk's built, you have beautiful taper and all of that, you're working on your tertiary branches, then yeah, absolutely, you can start putting them into a ceramic pot. Now, having said that, a lot of the times, depending on the size of your tree, you're going to need to put them into like a mica bonsai pot in between, or even just a larger size bonsai pot as you try and step it down into a shallower and shallower container. Obviously, things to keep in consideration, horticulture is huge, so don't put it into a shallow pot if you can't actually sustain the tree in it, meaning you can't adequately water it, you can't keep it alive. It doesn't make a lot of sense, even if it looks amazing, to put the tree into a really nice shallow pot. And like I said, it's going to take some time to get it into the perfect pot, and it might even take you a while to find the perfect pot for it, which we're going to get into now into the next part. So now that I've said my spiel about the stage of development that it's in, being very important, the next thing we're going to look at is, as far as ceramic containers are concerned, we're going to look at the different details of what goes into picking the right container for your tree. The first one, like I said previously, is horticulture. So the thing that you need to consider is the actual physical limitations of your tree and pot size, meaning if your Nabari is 8 inches, it's not going to fit into a Shohin sized pot, obviously. So things to take in consideration, like if I look at this little pot right here, would be the depth of the actual pot, whether that's actually going to be deep enough, as some species do require a bit of a deeper pot to be able to sustain themselves. The actual width and length of the pot as well. So if the tree's got Nabari that's going to be 3 inches, 2 inches, it's not going to fit very well in here unless I really worked on the roots and gotten them so well ramified that I could get them into a small pot like that. But then that would come back into our horticulture discussion that we just had. So now that the horticulture discussion is out of the way, I've said my bit, you know where I stand on it. We can get into the next part, which is actually going to be more of the aesthetic part of it. So the first thing to consider is what type of tree you're actually going to be repotting. So if it's going to be a conifer, then traditionally those go into an unglazed pot. So they'd go into something like this pot over here. And the reason that they go into like a brown or even like a gray unglazed pot is because the unglazed nature of the pot actually helps accentuate the movement and the bark of conifer trees. So specifically pines, if you think of a pine, it's got very rugged, thick bark on it. Putting it in a really bright glazed pot, most of the times they don't look very good together, and it kind of detracts from the natures of the tree that you're trying to accentuate. So a lot of times unglazed pots such as this one, or even this one right over here, can tend to be used with conifer trees because it helps accentuate the rugged nature of a conifer tree, as opposed to deciduous trees, which we'll get into now. They tend to be put into glazed pots, and the reason being is that deciduous trees, a lot of times, depending on the way the bark looks, like on a maple, let's say it's like a white silvery kind of color. Obviously if it's an Arakawa or something like that, it's going to be a rough bark. But depending on the type of tree you have, whether it's a beech or a maple or an elm, different kinds of glazes and pots are going to suit them a little bit better. So for instance, a flowering tree that's like an azalea, Satsuki azalea, they tend to have really bright, vibrant glazes to help kind of complement the flowers. Something like a maple tends to be put into like a nice blue pot or a really nice cream colored pot because it helps accentuate the trunk line as far as the bark, which is obviously maples tend to be displayed prominently when they're leafless. So the contrast between the pot being like a cream color and then the actual bark being that white silver kind of color looks really sharp and striking. It's kind of a bit of an exception to the rule is like a tropical type tree. Those tend to be put in unglazed or glazed pots depending on the style of the tree and what kind of stage it's in. Not stage, but size, I mean, sorry. So like a small shohin sized tree, shohin pots tend to have a lot more colorful glazes to them and you can be a lot more fun with them. Larger trees tend to be a little bit more refined and traditional in the kind of pots that they're put in, so they might not be put in something with a super bright crazy glaze, A, because it's really expensive to put that kind of a glaze on a pot, and B, because the tree tends to normally want to be a bit more grounded, kind of in like an unglazed discussion like with pines. You want to have the tree a little bit more grounded, a little bit more emphasis put on the tree and not so much the pot. Discussed about the glazing versus unglazed discussion. I'm going to get into the actual like shapes of the pots now. Basically they start from, if you want to look at what's considered feminine, you'd look at something round like this that's got an oval shape to it. Reason being is that soft kind of curved lines on a pot tend to complement more feminine style trees, meaning let's say a little bit higher of a beech tree that's got a really slender trunk that tapers up really nicely to it. That tends to be better in like a round style pot or just something that's a little bit more curved and feminine in appeal, as opposed to let's say something that's like a really rugged pine, or in this case maybe a really rugged masculine juniper. It would go something like this where it's got more kind of an angular feel to it, and especially like an unglazed pot is definitely typically a little bit more of a masculine style pot as opposed to a glazed pot. So typically think of it this way: if you have a very masculine rugged looking trunk or tree, you want to think about really angular thick kind of chunky pots that kind of accentuate that. Even unglazed pots in some cases would match like a deciduous tree if it was really really masculine. Then if you get into the more feminine styles, let's say really really dainty beech trees or really really nice shohin satsutsuki azaleas, then you're going to be looking at more of a feminine style pot with maybe like a really cool glaze, maybe something like this. That's kind of going to be how you're going to differentiate between the two of them. That just about wraps it up there, guys. So we've gone over the different styles of pots, what they're named, what they look like, what kind of glazes you're going to need for different species of trees, and what kind of shapes are going to complement the different styles that you've composed those trees in. We've also talked about the horticultural requirements for them, so just keep that in mind. It's like a really nice frame for really, really beautiful painting, and that's the analogy that a lot of people make. Having the right pot for the right tree makes a big difference aesthetically, but it should never be at the expense of the horticulture of the tree and the health of the tree. As Graham Potter always says, the health of the tree must always come first, and he was right with that. So keep that in mind. It's better to go a little bit deeper with the pot if you need to make sure that you can give it the adequate health requirements that it needs to make sure that it's going to be healthy and that you're not going to have problems with it. So yeah, I'm glad that you guys stuck around for the video. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe below, and be sure to stick around for more content. Thanks guys, have a great day.